Every year I sow my peas in this gutter. I've been doing it for about 5 years now. And I tend to grow sugar snap peas now, a type called Sugar Ann. And starting the peas in this gutter, in the greenhouse, can give them a little bit of a head start, but also protect them from slugs and from rodents digging up the seeds. But they're getting quite tall now, and it's time to take them out and put them in the garden so that they can grow and climb and produce those delicious peas. So I've shown you this before, but I'm going to show you again this year. Let's take this out and I'll show you how these can easily, fingers crossed, slide out and into their final position, which I've prepared just a few minutes ago. You know, the first time that I did this, I actually had to transport this entire gutter with me in the car to the allotments. And it's much nicer just being able to come outside and walk it around the corner. Okay, so how do we get it out of the gutter and into the soil? I've not watered these peas today so that the compost should be relatively dry. And the idea is that you just kind of jiggle this and pull it out from underneath the peas, and then they just slide right into the little trench that I built or dug earlier. If you water the compost before you do this, you will have a heck of a time getting these peas out. So just make sure that it's nice and dry. When I first heard the term pea sticks a long time ago, I thought they were a specific type of stick that you need to grow peas. All it means is dead branches, anything that you can stick into the ground and the peas can grow up. Now, the variety that I'm growing is Sugar Ann, and it should only grow about this tall. I grew it last year on the other side of this bed with a framework that I made out of bamboo and string. But since I had all of these branches, I thought, why not? Let's grow them on pea sticks this year. And this was part of a branch that came down on one of the colonies of bees at the bottom of the garden. And it's just been lying at the side, drying out, desiccating. And this will provide a really nice network for the peas to grow up, but it will also protect them from birds getting in and pecking at the young plants, and also will keep Maggie off. May is potentially the busiest and also the most exciting month in the gardening year. Up until now, I've been doing most of the gardening that I'm doing in the house and in the greenhouse where it's warmer and protected. And I've had grow lights set up. I've had a really close eye on the thermostat in the greenhouse, just making sure that it's warm enough for those seedlings to grow. But now we're in May and it's warming up outdoors, and a lot more of the activity is going to shift from those undercover growing areas to out here in the garden. I can start planting out more plants and direct sowing seeds and all of that. And then of course in the Polycrub as well. It's very soon that I'll be planting out the tomatoes and the aubergines and the melons and everything that is growing in the greenhouse into that warm environment. I've also planted a row of asparagus crowns in a little bit of an unconventional way. I'm going to show you that. I want to show you all the seedlings that I have right now growing in the greenhouse. And also we put in some new metal raised beds. And I can't wait to show those to you because they're beautiful. They still need filling. We're going to do that, and I'm going to sow them with the very first seeds just now. But there's a little bit of a thought process behind that, and I want to show that as an alternative way to start growing your own. There's a lot to see. We're going to have a good tour around the garden too, but let's get started. There is a lot going on in the greenhouse, and it is filling up with tons and tons of seedlings. And I'm going to take you through what we have in here. Starting over here, I have some sweet peas, some beets that I'm going to plant out a bit later here in the back, and lots of different cabbages. That's not chard, that's flat leaf parsley, mustards, all sorts of things. And I do start a lot of seeds like beetroot in modules initially, just to get a head start, because when you do grow in modules, you can keep an eye on them and you can stop any slugs from taking them out, and also keep them in a much more warm and controlled environment. Purple sprouting broccoli, some spinach. I planted the other ones out in the medium-sized veggie pod just a couple of days ago, along with some of the lettuces. These are all celeriac seedlings. And then I've sown some Brussels sprouts and asparagus kale there. The very first have come up. And then back here, I've just noticed that the first of the madder seedlings has come up. Over here on the potting bench, I have my plant surge trial going on, and I will tell you much more about that in the future when I've completed the trial. But basically, you know that plant surge, the water magnetizer that I have on my hose, well, I'm doing a trial to see if plants that are watered using plant surge have any difference to ones that are watered with tap water. So you can see those back there. There's already some interesting findings, but I will cover that in a future video. Over here, I have a lot more of the tomatoes, and I've got a couple of propagated Cape gooseberries. There's peppers in here, and then in the corner, the aubergines, and these are pretty much all going out in the Polycrub. One of the best harvests, the most unexpected harvests that I had last year was sweet potatoes. And I'd never grown them before because I hadn't had a place that was warm enough for them to grow and to flourish and create lots of tubers before. So I started off the process with buying rooted slips from a nursery in the UK, but they weren't cheap. And so this year I would like to grow sweet potatoes again, but I decided to root my own slips. Now, as I understand it, you could plant a sweet potato and grow it that way, but why would you when you can take cuttings off of a tuber and create loads of plants from just one superior tuber? And so that's what I've done. In this tub are 2 sweet potatoes. One I purchased, it's a purple sweet potato, and one is saved from the harvest last year. And in February, I filled this tub with some compost, just pure compost, put these tubers in so that they're only halfway in the compost. You can see it there. And then I created a bit of a greenhouse environment by putting cling film over the top, so I could peel that back, water them, check on them, and then put it back over so that they stayed nice and warm inside. And I had this in the house. Now, these leaves only started forming about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And it's these leaves that you're after rather than the roots that start growing from the tubers themselves. Because every single one of these stems that comes off the tuber, you can take it off the plant, root it, and it becomes its own new plant. When we bought our house 2 years ago, this entire area back here was pretty much unused and unusable as well, especially for gardening, because the ground here is so hard and solid with all kinds of rubble and gravel and a really thick clay that hardens into basically stone. Getting a spade in here is a real effort. So to make the space more usable, the first thing that we did was build the Polycrub, and it has been phenomenal. If you were with me last summer, you will have seen the massive harvest that came out of it. But what to do with all this other space? Now, ideally, we want to use it, or I want to use it for gardening space, but because the soil is so bad, you just can't grow in it. It's really difficult, can't work with it. And so I thought, raised beds. And I've got raised beds inside the Polycrub, but I wanted to do something a little bit different out here because These metal raised beds, I've seen them popping up on social media. Lots of people use them, and I've been wondering, what are the benefits of them? Well, first of all, they're metal that won't rust, that won't rot, that wood-boring insects like termites won't get into and ruin. So they're great for all of those. But also, if you're a renter or you're planning on moving, or you might move in the future, you don't know your future plans, you can lift these up and you can take them with you, or you can dismantle them and take them with you as well. So there's a lot of really positive things about these birdies raised beds. And if you're interested in them and want to learn a little bit more, I've put some information down in the video description along with a discount code if you're interested. But these are going to elevate the growing space back here. And I have some seeds, some calendula seeds and some greens, so a mix of salad greens. And I'm going to be growing them in these two raised areas this year. So the calendula is going to be at the back, it's going to add a splash of color, and then the greens are in the front. And hopefully having that little bit of elevated space will protect the greens from slugs as well. Fingers crossed. So that's the idea behind these beds. And then once they're filled, once they're planted, we're going to wood chip around them, create wood chip pads, so all of this kind of rubbly soil will be covered up. We're going to put in a nice pathway and some plantings, and by the end of summer, this is going to be a completely different space. Let's have a little walk through the veg patch. A lot of last year's veg is still in situ and still producing crops. So if you look down here, last year's celery, it survived all winter, and then I cut it back, and these are all new green leaves. And the same goes for the chard over here. And I've also got garlic that I planted last year. That'll be ready in June. Some lettuces. This is really interesting. I sowed all of this spinach last August, and it sat through the winter. It is a type called Matador, so it's supposedly bolt resistant, and it is starting to bolt now. I'm about to take all of this down and freeze most of the leaves, but I'm just really surprised that it hasn't bolted before now. So this might be something that I try doing again this year, just to have that really early spring spinach crop. The onions are looking good, broad beans are looking really good, and then further on down here, the new strawberries are filling out. They've got flowers, and I'm going to be planting and sowing some beetroot in this area here in just a little bit. But you remember the pre-sprouted parsnip seeds that I planted last time? Look at that. All of those little green leaves, those are parsnips. And this is probably the best germination that I've gotten. And all I did was pre-sprout the seeds. And this will need to be thinned out, but this is this year's parsnip crop. And I'm just astonished by how easy it was to pre-sprout the seeds and then just plant them out. I hope that the roots are not forked at all by that, but we will see this year. And if it's a success, I will continue to do that. Hey, Mags. She's been following me around. There's no catnip out here. This is a relatively new no-dig bed. You'll remember we started this off last year, put cardboard down, just piled some compost up on top, and that was it. And then not too long ago, I planted it up with some potatoes, which you can see growing down here already. And then my asparagus crowns showed up that I ordered last year. And up until then, I'd been thinking about them on and off. Where am I going to put these asparagus crowns? And I decided at the end to transplant some of the potatoes growing along this side, and they're just down below the wildflower trial area, and then put the asparagus along here. The reason for that is that I wanted to try putting them in no dig, so they're in a no dig bed. And also when they do grow and mature in the summer, the plants get very tall and fern-like, and I didn't want them to shade any of the crops growing around them. So I've put them here so that the light kind of casts their shadow back towards the compost area. No dig though. Have you ever heard of anyone putting in a no-dig asparagus bed? Well, I'd only heard about it recently because Charles Dowding does it. And I'm a no-dig gardener, and so I have given it a go, and I think that it has been a success thus far. Now, most resources and books will tell you that when you prepare an asparagus bed, that you need to dig it, remove all perennial weeds, create a mound, add organic matter, just all these hoops to jump through. And then you can carefully place the crown, which is a 1-year-old plant, on top of the mound, and then cover it over and keep it weed-free. Basically, treat them like prima donnas. But if you have really well-drained soil, and this is all well-drained here in the garden, you don't have to worry about all that prep work as much. And so I've created a no-dig asparagus bed. We're going to see how it does. And all I did was dig a little bit underneath the compost here and plant the asparagus. That's it. I have never dug this area before. There are some weeds that are coming through as well. I'll keep on top of those by weeding them out manually and just top this up with compost from year to year. Now, I have seen some spears coming up. Let's have a look. I've put an asparagus crown in every place where you see these wooden stakes. So down below, in between, this is where we're going to look to see asparagus spears. There was none in the first one, but here we go. We've got the very first skinny asparagus coming up here. And I won't touch it. I'll let it grow. There's none here. There's kind of a wonky one here. It looks like it got munched by a bit of a slug on the side, but it's still growing. And then up here, I notice another couple as well. Here's one here and another. And it'll be a good couple of years before I can make any harvests. This one's a little bit of an oddball, but putting this in now and investing in this area means that we might have incredible asparagus harvests in 2 years' time, and then every year after that. And that is one birdie's bed constructed and then filled. It took 12 wheelbarrow loads of compost and some vermiculite that I put in there as well. And I've now sown it up with a mesclun mix, so a salad greens mix, and calendula resina, which is a medicinal grade calendula flower, both from botanical interests. And now it's a matter of keeping an eye on it, keeping it watered, and waiting for the seedlings to come up. Now, if you're interested in these birdies raised beds, I have a discount code for you that you can use, and that is down in the video description, and that will give you a discount if you're in the USA or the UK. So definitely check that out. Now, in the next video, we're going to be in the Polycrub, getting it ready for summer, and hopefully this area down here will be a little bit more finished as well. I'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.